Hi folks, in my daytime job as a CTO of a computer hardware manufacturer, we have to do new product introduction every now and then. During that process we have to do design and manufacturing reviews every now and then. So we had one this week, and in the kickoff session I used the Sinclair QL as a use case to show in very bold to my team here in Switzerland, in Taiwan and in China about industrial design, about electronic engineering, product quality and so on. So to do so, I took some of my QLs to the office and held that session earlier this week. And I left everything in the office, so before I pack everything and go home, I want to show you what I told my guys. So looking at the QL, all started after the Sinclair Spectrum was launched in 1982. Project team was set up and work started. So what I have here, the earliest piece of hardware I have is issue 2 PCB with date code 8350. So this is a very early, I call it EVT, engineering validation test version of the PCB. You see many modifications done by the engineers to test it. In the aftermarket, someone cut off the expansion port. Then at about the launch or a few weeks later, there was the Sinclair QL computer in its beauty, a perfect piece of industrial design by late Rick Dickinson. And what I have here is an original dongled QL. I turn it to the backside to spot the serial number D03-001108. So you have to know that Sinclair always started with serial number 1001. So this is in fact the 108 QL ever built with tools in a factory. So I call this is a DVT machine, design verification tests. I remove the ROM port dongle shortly and open up the machine. Okay, what we have here inside is a Sinclair QL motherboard issue 4 with ceramic gold-plated CPU with ceramic ZX-8301 chip with the firmware in 16 kilobyte EPROMs. So three EPROMs were needed, 1, 2 and the third one in the dongle. And you have the IPC, the Intelligent Peripheral Controller, as an Intel chip with EPROM, and it has the pre-release firmware 0.7, which eventually made it into production. You see some designs which were changed in the process. So you see that the heatsink here used in the early QLs is of that shape, and it was hand modified to allow the place for this electronic component. And then you see that on the back of the plastic case there are no ventilation holes yet, so those were introduced a bit later. And the micro drives were just square blocks. Those are not the later teeth micro drives which you can find on mass production. So generally speaking, the machine is looking nice, but has quite a few things which were not completed and were changed until mass production. You can already spot that the keyboard membrane is a weak point, so this is looks like a replacement membrane in the machine. Okay, because the tape is no longer in place here. Then we have another QL here. All look the same from the outside, from the front. So we turn it over to the back side and you see the serial number D04-001305. So this is the QL number 305 ever produced in a factory. You also spot some yellow stickers on that machine. The yellow stickers are reworks done. So this machine was sent in for a rework. Most likely the machine originally was shipped with EEPROM dongle with this so-called clutch, and the first owner was sending it back for rework. So this I call is a production verification test unit, PVT, and we open it shortly. Okay, we see that the keyboard membrane, the flat printed cable, is already cut off a bit and is no more connected to its place. So PVT had issue 5 main boards, and this machine after rework became real ROM chips. So those two ROMs are the JS version, but you still see that at one day there was this logic chip in place for decoding the EEPROMs. The IPC is already mass production, but still with 0.7 pre-production firmware, and micro drives also as in the original design, as is the heatsink. But you spot the ventilation holes on the back of the case. So the case was already, the tooling was modified, so that's close to mass production. That's a PVT version. And this machine has a signature of late Rick Dickinson and David Carlin. I met those two nice guys at around the QL's 30th anniversary, and yeah, it's a very nice collector's unit, and I take good care of it. Good, then we move on. There were about 66,000 machines produced with more or less that build state, that means issue 5 PCB, and some minor modification. Sinclair already was in mass production, but the design they used in mass production was still PVT. Okay. So here we have another QL, as you can see, and it's quite a special one. We turn it to the back side and we see the serial number is starts with 2 filled squares, and then 8, and then 12, 35, 38. So this is a very late QL. It's in the 120,000 numbers, and the build standard should be D18, but someone, operator in the factory, maybe had wrong information or just did it wrong on the machine which engraved or heat melted the number to the machine. So that's why it's not D18, it's just question mark 8 or something. Also you spot a yellow sticker, but that means that in the factory it was done with those modifications referred with those numbers and points. So the machine D18 is so-called mass production. So we open it, and what we see, as in most mass production machines, are issue 6 PCBs. So everything else is almost like on the previous QL, but they had the CPU from Motorola in plastic case at that stage. And you spot a clear membrane with a clear FPC. So this is an aftermarket membrane I installed just weeks ago, because the original membrane, still of this brittle material, had micro cracks all over and was not working at all. You see on those mass production QLs that the micro drive have got the modification on the chassis to make sure that they stay in place. And also the heatsink is the standard one, which was made for the QL in a factory. And some special thing about D18 is one would expect it has a issue 7 motherboard, but the production of those machines were during the financial crisis at Sinclair Research, and the factory was told to use material they have on stock. Nonetheless, it's a bit out of defined build standard. So D16 and D17 had issue 7 motherboards, and D18 again had some leftovers. So that's maybe a reason why they did not write 18, because it was not a pure build standard. But nice machine, pretty proud of that one. Okay, let's move on. Make some place on the table, and you see there's another QL here. Almost the last one for today. Looking the same from the outside. So we do what we did before. We turn it to the back side, everything one hand, and whoa, no serial number at all. What's with that QL? So lay it down. Okay, what we see here is that we have a sticker with a date code, warranty 885. That means the machine was produced in August 1985. And I'm not sure you can see on the bottom of the case, with a modified tooling, there's written made in the Republic of Korea by Samsung Electronics. So this is a QL made by Samsung in Korea, as you can read. And so this was the second source for Sinclair, and it's not a no-name source. This is one of today's most well-known and most successful electronics company. And okay, there's another sticker, and on that sticker you see a serial number S13-004322, and a bit more important than the serial number sticker is that this is the FCC sticker for the US. So this Samsung made QL, as all Samsung made QLs for the US market, together with the printer, was really FCC approved, and that took Sinclair quite a while to get the approval. You can spot a bit from the FCC idea that it was done in 1985, maybe in January. Should Google for that, how the format of that is official. But that's a nice machine, and then when you turn it to the back, you spot that, okay, the US versions had different connectors for a serial port and a joystick port. And one of the design faults for the general QL using this non-standard BT plugs. This was a kind of an improvement. And then you have a channel switch for the American TV set. Other than that, everything is pretty much the same as on the English QLs. So the S13 build standard for the US version, North American version of the QL, was the first produced by Samsung, and the 13 has not really a correlation to the build standards of the UK made. They have somehow, but they missed it sometime by 1 or 2. So point is that the UK build standard D14 is the first which issues 6 motherboards, which has this Hull chip, which encodes quite a bit of the QL design problems of inter-chip communication. And all the S13 machines also have exactly that chip. I must find it, I think it's in that position. I was wrong a bit, sorry for that. So that should be S14, not S13, but you know, nobody's perfect. Inside the QL is really different, so all the plastic case is metal sprayed internal to make really it comply with FCC radiation standards. It has a lot of springs all over and of earthing points to make sure that the machine makes less noise and is also less getting less noise. So that's quite a work. Sinclair had to use this industrial and electronic design for a country like UK, which had almost no regulation for computers back in the early 80s, to a market like the US, where there were quite a standard of regulations and safety rules. And the motherboard made by Samsung is also different in another aspect. You cannot spot any motherboard issue number on the top of the PCB. You need to dismantle the QL, take the motherboard out and look on the backside. So I have here another motherboard. It's one from a US QL, so one which was in a S13 build standard. And when you turn it to the backside, you can see that the PCB version is there. So there's a Sinclair QL 1984, and then because the engineer thought that's the machine only for the US, so they counted, they said that's the US version, and they counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, 6. There were quite a few PCB revisions for the Samsung made QLs, and the wording US is maybe not 100% correct, because after they introduced the QL to the US, they were also introducing it in Germany, and here we have a German edition from the QL. So that's the first machine in this video where you see a visual difference from the top view. And that's the keyboard, because the keyboard layout is different in Germany. It's QWERTZ instead of QWERTY, and it has the umlauts, and on the numbers there are different signs for the operation using the shift key. So the German QL is, we turn it to the back side. Okay, it has a serial number. Let's try to make a proper view of that. So we see that this German QL is SG18, so Samsung for Germany, build standard 18, sequential number 009978. So this is machine 8978 of that build standard. So Samsung counted differently. They count per build standard, and there were only two. All the US versions, S13, and then the sequential number for S13, and all the SG18 for Germany, and a sequential serial number for the German build. Other than that, everything looks really the same. You have the same case, you have the same type of sticker. So this machine was produced in March 1986. Then here there is no FCC sticker, but you know, Germany also had a kind of rules and stickers. So they put here the seal, which had all the regulation fulfilled. And you see that the machine really had to comply with this so-called VDE. That was one of the definitions in Germany before we all got this CE regulation. Okay, I put the machine back here to show you something else. I open it quickly. Give me a second. Okay, here we are. There's no machine inside. So when I was still a trader back in the 1980s, selling QL hard-end software and being a software publisher, I was able to buy a bunch of empty cases from late German QLs from an industrial company which used the QL electronics to build industrial systems. So they had no use for the case because they used the QL motherboard minus the micro drive, which they scrapped for as an industrial computer without keyboard. And so I could buy quite a few cases, and this QL was just opened, removed the electronics, and the case is almost brand new. So it has, the keyboard has no operation hour, and so has the keyboard membrane, but it's already brittle just from laying around, and it was already brittle 30 years ago. So the quality of the membrane, and especially of the flat printed cable coming out of the membrane, is so poor that almost all QLs still existing have at least their second, if not third, keyboard membrane. So from my point of view, design and production, this was the biggest mistake Sinclair was doing. Sinclair should have invested just a few pennies more and get the keyboard membrane in material quality like that, and that would have saved many QLs dying with a bad or broken keyboard. Okay, so what you can also see here is that the metal plate on the Samsung made QL is of real steel, where the English versions or English production run had aluminium. So that's quite different. So I have two extras to show you, which take me a while to prepare. And yeah, if you like this video, leave a comment and thumb up and share it with your friends. And see you in a minute. Cheers.